Have you ever felt the need to kill somebody? Just out of curiosity? No? What are you, some sort of saint? Chances are you've definitely had the thought, my boss is so stupid, I just want to club him in the back of the head. But you're not going to act upon them. Well, that would be the case for most of you guys watching at home. We are not stone cold killers. However, the story today would be completely out of obscurity and totally preventable if our main character had came to her senses in time.
You are watching Dark Boy.
So, just before we get into everything, my name is Dark Boy. Hi, how's it going? I do true crime videos that are made into short story form content. If you do like these type of videos, you're at the right place. I'm going to be posting a couple times a week. Hope you guys click that like button and subscribe and click that notification bell so every time I upload, you guys will be notified. Now let's get back to the story at hand today. This is Yoo-Jung, a 23-year-old woman who was caught on CCTV carrying a luggage bag down the road. This was the early morning of May 27th. 2023. The seemingly innocent footage becomes nightmare fuel as we realize the true story behind this footage. The contents of the luggage bag would be later determined to be dismembered parts of a body. Before we dive into what exactly happened that amounted to this tragedy, let's start from the beginning. Jun was born in the year 1999, and with all people that would later in life commit heinous acts, you may see a pattern of childhood neglect. Her parents were too busy managing their own business, which left young Jun in the care of her grandparents. She grew up in the northern district of Busan and attended a private school named Kungae Girls High School. Classmates would describe her as shy and introverted, barely having any social interactions with the members of her own class. She would eat lunch alone, play in the playgrounds by herself, and even walk home alone from school. She had no friends, and after graduation, no one heard or even cared about any news from the shadow of a classmate. From accounts of her family, Jun spent most of her days at home. She did not pursue a post-secondary education, but instead opted to study for a social service exam. If she did pass this exam, she would have gotten a well-paying job, and her life would be quite stable from then on. She would ultimately fail multiple times at taking this exam because her English proficiency level was not that of standards. This may have left a grudge in her heart, which would soon develop into a full hatred later in the story. In her free time, she would indulge in anything that is related to true crimes. She had an undying fascination about the whole subject, from podcasts on iTunes to horror novels, then to YouTube channels with awesome content like this one. She ate everything up. It may be due to her lack of social interaction or being in a constant state of never achieving anything she actually wanted. Jun began to develop serious and dark and disturbing thoughts. A few months before the whole suitcase incident occurred, her browsing history would show that she was developing strong emotions towards the outside world. Multiple disturbing searches, such as how to get away with murder and what was the perfect crime ever committed, would be inputted through Google's search system. This, however, didn't raise any suspicions within the authority. After all, it was far too common for an individual such as you and I to be interested in these morbidly curious aspects of life. Just as you are presumably sitting at home and watching this video, it is not a crime to be intrigued and curious about these kind of subjects. Also, a fun fact, for a person to be actually warranted on like a list from the FBI, you need to be searching several of these terms: child porn, anything related to terrorism, pirating, and anything related to with dark web, including drugs, arms supply, and human trafficking. Try your best not to search any of these up. I know it's really hard to control yourself, but do your best, guys. I believe in you. Now back to the main story. She developed an uncontrollable urge to take another one's life. Through a psychological standpoint, this might be because she feels that she has no control over anything that happens in her own life. Wanting to end someone else's life would probably make her feel more in control of the whole situation. Her desires became so overbearing that she started meticulously plan on a murder of someone else. Through month and month of preparation, she was finally able to come up with the perfect plan. It was May 26th of 2023 when she fully enacted her plan. Jun arrived at her unfamiliar apartment complex in front of the doorsteps of Miss A, dressed as a high school student. The two had met online on a popular Korean tutoring app, with Jun disguised herself as an online persona of a mother looking for academic help for her children, particularly in the school subject of English. This method of finding a victim was pretty obvious from the get-go. Jun did not have much experience in dealing with social interactions, as we discussed that she was a complete loner in primary school and high school. It was probably much easier to interact with someone without having to meet them face to face. The application became the perfect tool for her to get to know potential suspects, as all she needed to do was send out a post and wait for a response. Jun, having a small stature, meant that she would have difficulty overpowering anyone that was slightly bigger than her. Men would be off the table because most of them are physically stronger than women. The tutoring application became the perfect hunting ground. as most of the tutors would be women and completely clueless of Jun's intention. She had contacted over 50 victims before setting her eyes on A. After a couple days of talking, they had agreed to a date where Jun would travel to Miss A's home for a 2-hour English lesson. Prior to meeting up, Jun would purchase a student uniform and a pocket knife at a local convenience store. As Jun knocked on Miss A's door, Miss A looked out through her peephole and saw a smallish figure standing in front of her home. Jun could be easily mistaken for a high school student as her stature was only 4 feet 9. So Miss A welcomed her without a second thought. Just as she did with many other students before, she started conversing with Jun. After learning that Miss A lived alone, Jun's face contorted with a wicked smile, knowing that her plan would soon come to fruition. When Miss A had her back against Jun, she would pull out her knife that was hidden behind the skirt and start stabbing at the back of Miss A. Later during the autopsy, almost 100 cuts were found on the deceased body. So as a fun fact, once the knife is plunged in your back, you wouldn't actually have any energy to let out a loud scream. Hence why none of the neighbors actually heard any commotion. After Jun made sure that Miss A lost all signs of life, Jun traveled back home to grab a suitcase which she prepared earlier. She headed over back to the convenience store to purchase bleach and plastic bags. Surveillance footage captures Jun happily strolling down the side of the road, as if she hasn't just brutally killed another individual. Once back at Miss A's apartment, she would dismember her body into multiple little pieces, dunk each portion in bleach, and wrap them in plastic bag for easy transportation. She then stuffed everything into her pre-prepared suitcase. Jun had even cut off all Miss A's fingers so that the police would have a difficult time identifying the body. At around 3 a.m. the next day, which was the 27th, Jun could be seen at the side of the road hailing for a taxi. A taxi driver who was operating the night shift noticed her and slowed down for the pickup. He offered Jun help with the suitcase, but obviously she didn't want him touching the suitcase at all. So Jun merely grabbed the suitcase and stuffed in the back seat and crawled in afterwards. Jun gave the taxi driver a destination of a wooded area by Nakdon Riverside. Now this immediately raised suspicions from the taxi driver. Why would this little girl randomly at 3 a.m. in the morning go to such rural area? However, he did abide the request. Obviously, she was a customer and he didn't want to lose any money. So after 30 minutes of driving, the two had arrived at the wooded area. After Jun was dropped off, the taxi driver stayed in the same location, maybe just to contemplate what he had witnessed. When he turned around to look if there was anything that was going on in the backseat, what he saw truly made him shudder. A pool of dark liquid amassed on his seat. He quickly came out from his driver's side and opened the back door just to get an understanding of what this liquid was. It was a pool of dark red blood. The driver immediately notifies the police station of what he just witnessed. It seems that Jun had not even noticed that her suitcase was leaking. The taxi driver knew that she wouldn't be staying in the area for long, and she needed a ride home. So he stayed at the scene just to see if she could wait her out. Jun did indeed eventually hop out of the bushes, and she may have not even recognized the taxi driver. She hollered at the taxi, which the driver obliged, and hopped on the car, urging the driver to take her back to the city. The driver was able to stall Jun for quite some time, and the police eventually did arrive on scene. Since Jun still had her suitcase on her, police asked her to open the suitcase to take a look. A few droplets of blood were found, which Jun explained that it was her menstrual blood. Why would there be menstrual blood in your suitcase? The police sequenced off the perimeter and asked Jun to stay where she was. Upon searching the wooded area, they found multiple pieces of mutilated human flesh, and Jun was then apprehended. When going through her personal belongings, her phone actually showed how lonely she was. She had barely any entries in her contact and messages, and concerning search histories was shown up months prior to before this incident happened. Initially, she claimed that someone else had murdered the victim and had forced her to dispose of the body. But after the CCTV footage were uncovered, there was no sweet talking out of this one. A's phone, ID, and wallet were also found in her possession. Jun then changed her story into the two having an argument, which resulted in the two throwing punches at each other, and eventually Jun stabbing the teacher. This didn't actually go through because there were no injuries found on John's body, and without any other excuse, she would eventually confess to the murder of Miss A. It was theorized that she targeted Miss A simply because 1. She was a woman who had a really small stature, and 2. Taught the subject of English. By targeting individuals who were even smaller than herself, she would likely be able to overpower them, and that stuffing their body into a suitcase would be obviously more easy. On the subject of English, remember how she failed multiple times to pass her civil service exam because her English was not up to par. She may have chosen Miss A just due to jealousy, as Miss A graduated a prestigious university, and having a license to actually teach the subject. The police found the remaining pieces of the tutor within the apartment, as it was likely that Jun was in the process of traveling back to her apartment to dispose of even more pieces. As for the perfect crime, Jun left DNA samples and fingerprints all over the crime scene. Even without these evidence, the police can easily look over the history of who Miss A talked to online before the disappearance. So Jun's perfect plan was riddled with holes from the very start. Jun was issued to a psychiatric hospital where she would be evaluated using the 4-factor psychopath diagnostic test. This consisted of 20 questions and a score out of 40. A score of 25 or more would be considered psychopathic in Korea. It should be noted that the average person should score a 15. She scored a 28, which means that she was a certified psychopath. Now Korea decided to disclose the perpetrator's identity to the public, as seen here in this new broadcast.
살인 충동을 혹시 언제부터 느끼신 걸까요?
피해자는 유가족께 할 말 없습니까?
피해자와 유가족분들에게 전 진심으로 죄송합니다.
살해 후에 여러 차례 집을 오가셨는데 혹시 이유가 있었을까요?
실종 사건으로 위장하려고 했습니까?
제정신이 아니었던 것 같습니다. 죄송합니다.
Jun states that she is sorry for her actions, saying that she was out of her mind when this happened. Her grandfather also expressed her deepest regret to the public, stating this: "I want to express my sincerest apology to the victim's family for failing to raise my granddaughter properly." On November 24th, 2023, Jun was sentenced to life in prison. Her perfect crime was not so perfect after all, and thanked the heavens for her stupidity that she was caught, because who knows what else she could have done after this incident. Now that's true, it kind of raises my concerns as who in the audience would be considered a psychopathic serial killer? Have you guys murdered anyone? To be honest, I believe that the likelihood would be quite low, as severe psychopathic mentality only affects 1% of people, although some research suggests that almost 30% of us experience some kind of psychopathic trait. What are your thoughts about this case? I would love to hear them in the comment section below. And hopefully, for those who are watching, don't act upon your deepest and darkest desire. Thank you for watching. My name is Dark Boy. I will see you again in the next video.